In this workout, you can use 1 or 1.5 pound weights and attach them to your ankles if you want. You can also do it without for a similar effect. Let's start lying on our side, eyes looking straight ahead, spine long, toes reaching away from the top of your head. Slowly lift those legs to about hip height, pause, and then slowly lower back down. So think about your bottom inner thigh being your primary mover. You're lifting from there without letting your bottom ribs press down to the mat, keeping your spine nice and long as you lift and pause, and then slowly lower back down. Let's lift to the top and then begin scissoring our legs just a few inches apart, keeping them lifted, keeping your toes constantly reaching away from the top of your head. Scissoring one way and the other without letting those legs drop. And then keep your bottom leg forward, lift your legs one more inch, and then lower the same inch. Each time you lift, try exhaling, deepening through your core, and then lower with control. So a lift and a lower, not a lift and a flop. You're working the whole time. Legs back together, lower all the way down. And then bend your knees to a 90-degree angle. Your spine is still neutral, tailbone is reaching behind you. Lift your top leg to hip height, pause, and then control the lowering down movement. Each time you lift, let's exhale and pause, and then control as you lower back. Left ribs, those bottom ribs, stay lifted off the mat. Eyes stay looking straight ahead. Shoulders are stacked. Pelvis stays nice and stacked as well. And then begin circling that top leg. So as you're circling, your pelvis stays still. So as much as you're going to start to feel your glute, that top glute working, your bottom glute's working as well, you're also going to feel your core. It is keeping your pelvis still as your leg makes these small, controlled circles. Keep that foot and knee at the same level if you can, controlling that movement. And then let's reach that leg all the way back behind us. Pause, and then bend it back to that 90-degree angle. So when you reach back, reach straight underneath you and then squeeze that thigh bone back an inch. Get the underside of that glute at the end of the movement, and then bend it right back in. Control. Waistline stay long, bottom ribs stay lifted. Bending in and reach. Control as you bend, waistline stay long and reach. Just 90 degrees with that leg. Don't bring your knee all the way into your chest. And then let's begin bringing our straight leg forward. So your straight leg will stay at hip height, reach it out, and then squeeze right back underneath you again, squeezing that thigh bone backwards at the end of the movement, and then reach that thigh bone all the way forward as far as you can keep your pelvis still and keep that foot at hip height. Controlling the squeeze. You'll see there's no change in my waistlines. They both stay long the whole time. Don't let anything crunch through there. Hips stay nice and stacked. Controlling. And then let's point those toes down so your knee points down. You're in medial rotation, and you're going to lift your leg one more inch, lifting from the top of that thigh where that femur enters your hip socket. Pulse up, control down. It's not a lift and a drop. It's a lift and control. Whew. And then let's come right over to the other side. Same thing, looking straight ahead, spine nice and long. This time we're lifting from our right inner thigh. Lift to about hip height, pause, and then slowly lower back down to that hover. Exhale each time you lift. Inhale, controlling as you lower. Lifting from that bottom inner thigh without letting those bottom ribs press down. Top waistline stays long, just a light touch with that arm in front. Exhale to squeeze. Staying at the top, let's scissor our legs. So keep them lifted as you're scissoring, just a few inches apart. Doesn't need to be big. Think control over range of movement. You want your pelvis to stay still as you're scissoring back and forth. Nice and controlled. Then you'll pause with your bottom leg forward and lift 1 more inch. Exhale each time you lift that inch for 5 little lifts. Little lift with control. Lower back down. Lift with control and lower. Legs together and then lower all the way down. Bend those knees in. Knees back to the level of your hips. Lift your foot and your knee together. Pause and then control back to that hover. Again, exhale each time you lift. Keep that pelvis nice and still. Inhale, lowering back. Keeping those bottom ribs lifted off the mat. Keeping that top waistline long. Lift, pause, and lower with control. Come to about that hip height level, and then we'll begin circling our leg. Small controlled circles. Remember, your abs are working to keep your pelvis still, so as much as you feel that left glute, you will also feel your core. Circling back the opposite direction. Again, keeping your waistlines long, keeping that pelvis nice and steady. Controlling those circles, keeping your foot and knee at the same level. And then let's reach that leg all the way back behind us. Bend back to 90 degrees and then reach through those toes. Give that extra little squeeze back underneath that glute and then bend back in. Press and reach with that extra squeeze and bending in. So your bottom leg should stay flat on the mat. Bottom hip stays directly underneath that top hip. Bottom ribs stay lifted. Squeeze that leg back and control. Squeeze, reach, feel that length in your waistlines. Keep them nice and long even as that leg comes forward. Straight leg forward, about hip level, and then press all the way back. So bringing that leg right up to about the level of your hips or as high as you can come, keeping neutral. As far forward as you can come, keeping neutral. And then squeeze back. The foot stays at hip height. Forward and back with that extra squeeze. Slow and controlled. Leg forward. Reach it back. Extra squeeze. Remember, you're squeezing back from underneath that left glute. Abs deepen to keep your pelvis still. Bring that leg forward. Reach. Feel length in your spine. And then turn that leg into medial rotation, so knee points down, and lift from the top of that thigh. 1 inch up, 1 inch down. Small little pulses in medial rotation. Hips stay stacked. A lift with a pause and a lower with control. Bring it all the way in. And then remove your weights from those ankles if you have them on. Let's hold them in our hands. Come to neutral, lying on the mat. Arms reach to the ceiling. Ribs are heavy. Tailbone is tipped away that little bit. Lift your heels so you're light on your toes, and then bring one leg to tabletop at a time. Reach fingertips from toes, and then pull back in. So alternating from right to left. Same arm and same leg. Thinking length, fingertips reach from toes, and then pull back. Lengthen away and pull back in. Each time you're reaching, exhale. Inhale to pause, exhale to return. Exhale, reaching, inhale, pause, exhale, return. Nice, slow, controlled movements. We can go to 2 arms and 2 legs. If you feel your back at all, don't move your legs this far. You can see I'm not moving mine very far. Focus on keeping those ribs heavy. Think about a corset around your rib cage, keeping them nice and tight. Arms don't need to move far either. If you feel your ribs lifting, don't move your arms as far. Reach, pause, and exhale back in. Exhale, reach, pause, exhale back in. Nice and controlled. Lower one leg, lower the other. Keeping your shoulder blades flat against the mat, press through your heels, lift those hips, holding at the top, arms reach overhead, roll that spine back to the mat. Take a breath, arms up, and then roll all the way back. Pressure through your heels and your big toes, arms reach, articulate back to the mat, back through neutral, arms back to the ceiling. Nice and controlled. Let's lift our right leg all the way up to tabletop. Pressure into your left heel and your left big toe. Reach your right fingertips from your right toes. Little pause and in. You don't need to straighten your leg completely. Your arm doesn't need to move far. The challenge is to keep your pelvis nice and level. So don't let your right hip drop. Don't let your left hip drop. Keep those hips level. Keep constant pressure into your left heel and your left big toe. Feel those ribs staying tight around your center as you move. Reach and all the way in. Now let's lower our hips and then lift them back up. Lower hips, reach arms overhead. Hips and ribs come down together and then pause at the bottom and then press to lift back up. You're not lowering and actually resting. You're just coming to a hover and then lifting back up. If you feel your back, again, bring your right toes down. Just keep them a little bit light on the mat. You could also bring your arms down and just have the leg up. Doesn't matter how far you lower those hips. Let's lower that leg. Come all the way back to the mat. Take a breath. And then let's roll back up. Press through those heels. Lift your left heel. Hips are level as you lift your left leg to tabletop. Start with the reaches. Toes reach from fingertips. Reaching long, and notice what's happening with your right leg. Does your right leg fall out at all, or are you able to keep that right inner thigh connected so that your right leg stays nice and parallel? Right knees are reaching away from the top of our head. Reach and control. Use that breath to help you. Lower those hips, reach those arms, and then press back up. Remember, the challenge is to keep your hips lined up. So lower your hips together, reaching those arms overhead and press. If you feel your back, don't lower your hips as much. You could bring your left toes down to the mat, just have them lightly touching. Eliminate the arms, keep them down on the mat. Is a great alternative as well. Work your way up to the full version. Lower those left toes, heels, roll all the way back to the mat. Come all the way down through to neutral. Hug those knees in, have a roll around. And you did it.